some people say, well, we don't have fans. I'm like, there's fan communities for scented candles. They're called Fandoms. It's a real thing. You can look it up. So if scented candles can have a fan base, like your business can too.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Beyond Social podcast. I'm Reggie, one of your hosts, and this is the show where we go behind the scenes on how we're building an awesome tool for social media marketers. Actually, today we're going to switch gears. Instead of talking about some of the strategies and tactics that are more theoretical, we had an opportunity to speak recently with Jon-Stephen on a couple of different topics. And we were really excited to bring him onto the show today to talk about community management. And really, he's got some very heartwarming stories, some stories that show you tactically how community management can transform a brand in the eyes of an audience. And so Jon-Stephen, for those of you who might not know him, he's a social media consultant, he's a speaker, he's a founder also of Saturnine Media, where he's worked with brands like Prime Video to manage socials on TV shows like Invincible, Sausage Party. So Jon-Stephen, thank you so much for being here with us.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here.
And this is the third time today, but I'm going to apologize. I called you John.
No
it's going to take me a little bit.
No
I've got
worries.
a lot of friends named John, but by the end of this episode, Jon-Stephen, it's going to be there. So I'd love to kind of chat with you today. I know that, you were chatting with our team, our marketing team a little bit recently. You've been exploring Vistasocial for a bit, and that's kind of how we've got connected. But the work that you've been doing, both as a consultant, as a speaker, and with freelancing with Prime Video, it's exciting stuff.
Yeah. It's been wild. I'm really privileged, very lucky to be able to do some of the things I do. I started my career doing social media in higher ed, and did a stint in government, and then during COVID did some soul searching, so I wanted to do something else, and landed the opportunity to work in the entertainment industry, starting with a freelance job working on the Prime Video series Invincible, and I've worked on season 1, 2, and it led to me working on more things. Like I got to work on Rings of Power. I got to work on Sausage Party, Foodtopia, Has Been Hotel, a few other things. And it's been quite a journey and a lot of fun. So I kind of have to pinch myself every day that I get to work on some of the things that I do as a freelancer.
That's amazing. I'm sure it's like a dream come true. By the way, I didn't mention Rings of Power because I don't know whether or not we're allowed to bring up certain things. So
I can't talk too much about it, but I can say I worked with an agency called Chaotic Good Studios and worked on that with them.
That's awesome. Well, maybe we start there. I'd love to hear a little bit about the journey, right? Before we dive into the community management, let's find out the man behind the scenes. So Jon-Stephen, how did you realize that social media was where you wanted to be career-wise?
Well, my original goal was not to be a social media manager. I wanted to go back to school, get my PhD, my master's in literature, and teach literature at a college level. And I was it's about 2008. And I was teaching English as a second language at a university, and noticed my students weren't paying attention to me. They were on their phones, on Facebook, back when college students were still on Facebook. And all the teachers in our department were very frustrated. They're like, why are they, what can we do? They were collecting cell phones at the beginning of class. And I was like, this is not the way to go. We need to figure out how to use it as a tool and not a toy. So I started creating Facebook groups for each of my classes, and that led to me promoting our department on social media, and then kind of rising through the ranks I became the go-to guy on campus for social media as it was emerging, running it for different departments. And finally I was like, can I just run social for the entire university? And the university said, no, we don't have that position yet. And I said, well, I'll go find one that does. So I did that for a while, and did social media in higher ed, up, like I said, until about COVID.
Right.
And, one thing they drill into your mind in higher ed is publish or perish. So all that time is we're going to talk about community building today. I'm building my own community. I'm, talking about my job, talking about best practices on social media, on Twitter, and going to conferences and speaking there about what we were doing at the university with our social media. And when I was ready to find a new job, I put it out there that I was looking for something else, and a follower I had just reached out to me on DMs and said, hey, I work with Prime Video. We've got this new series called Invincible. You are obviously a comic nerd, because you saw that I posted about that stuff, and your social. Would you like to come on board as a freelancer for that? And it just led to one thing led to another.
Wow.
So part of it, a lot of luck, but also I think it shows the benefit of actually, as a social media manager, putting yourself out there a little bit.
That's awesome. I do want to pinpoint the fact that And maybe you're just so used to it because this is part of your character, but you hit a roadblock in higher ed, which is like, hey, at the university, we don't really have a position for that. A lot of people might have been like, oh, okay, I'll kind of wait. I'll kind of do my time here and wait. But you decided to say, no, there's probably an opportunity for me somewhere, and I'm hungry. I want to grow. So good on you to do that. It's a challenge. But
yeah. It required a move and all of that. But, it's something that I think is really important. You kind of see those opportunities and you go for them.
You got to jump. Jump. So you mentioned community management. And I think really I know the term is technically what the industry uses, but I really like to see it more of like you're building ambassadors. You're building a presence where people are excited about your product. They're excited about the show, right? Mm-hmm. You're building a fandom around something, and it doesn't happen by you shouting to the void, right? Megaphone style. So I guess what was the point in your career where you realized that was crucial to social?
Definitely higher ed plays a big part of that. College campus is just a vibrant community, and there's really nothing else like it in social, because it's almost like I compare it to like running social media for an entire city, because you have like housing and transportation and all of these different departments that are all kind of coming together, and different audiences. You have alumni, you have prospective students who are still in high school, coming to campus, and trying to reach out to those people personally. When a student would post, hey, I just got accepted to Texas State University where I was working, sending that message and saying, hey, congratulations. If you have any questions about the campus, just let us know. Or on the flip side of that, you'd see them, I worked in higher ed for many years. So I would have those students that would post that they got accepted. And then all the way 4 years later, I just graduated, but they didn't know it was me and my tiny windowless office in the administration building. They thought, oh, Texas State University replied to me. They're excited about it,
Right.
And it really can make a difference. We'd have students they'd apply to 10 colleges and say, I got accepted to Texas State and 2 other colleges. And we'd reply, hey, if you have, and no one else would. Yeah. Now it's very different. Everybody applies to those, but finding those ways to engage your community and make them feel special, make them feel heard. It's really important. And I think that very much carried on as I went out of higher ed and into the entertainment industry. And instead of working with students, I work with fandoms. So it's a little bit different, but it's very, very similar.
But exactly what you're saying. It's very similar in the sense too, that as a brand, as a show, no matter what industry you're in, the moment you start seeing your audience as a number, that's when things get very dangerous, right? And I think, we're not going to go into that route specifically in this conversation, but I do want to explore. You've talked about some of the things that have happened, experiences on Prime Video. Can you share the story where, there was the parent with the picture of Invincible? Do you want to share?
We once, I was working one day and noticed that somebody had posted a photo of their son, said, oh, my son wanted to do his best Invincible pose. We went to the comic book store, wanted to do it. And he did the pose. If you haven't seen it, on the first issue of Invincible, he's like up against a brick wall. He's got his fist out and like ready to punch. And the kid was wearing an Invincible like costume shirt. And I saw, man, this is so cool. Kid's a little too young to watch Invincible, but that's neither here nor there.
Topic for another day.
So I ran to my laptop, opened Photoshop, and photoshopped his son into the actual image of the first issue, and sent it back to them, and just said, tell him he's doing a great job. And it didn't get a huge amount of engagement, but that's not what matters. It's that we made that dad and his son's day, and that's something that they're never going to forget. They've probably got that photo saved somewhere very special. So anytime you can do that and just reach out in that engagement one-on-one, it's really important. It makes your audience feel heard. It makes them feel special, and it makes them lifelong fans in many ways. So it's important to be listening and looking for those opportunities to engage.
Yeah. And I was watching a documentary recently. I'm going to tie this back into here, but it was about the Lego, the history of Lego, right? And so how there was a big period of time where in their organization, they were very hesitant with the fandom in the adult community, right? Who were very passionate about Lego building. And it wasn't until they started engaging with that fandom and showing up at the events and making them a part of the experience that they started seeing a completely different trajectory. as an organization. So I think that just speaks volumes into why this is crucial. And it's not just, hey, this is a tool in my toolbox and it's a strategy. Like, this is a brand communicating and engaging with their audience who love the show, right? So I love to hear another story. I know you got a couple.
Yeah, and you're right on the money there. It's that level of engagement and making them, those fans, they're talking about you anyway,
right?
And a lot of people might be watching or listening to this and go, well, I don't work on a TV show, but it applies to all sorts of things. It may not be your brand specifically, but they're talking about your industry. So jumping in there and finding those conversations is really important. I kind of joke, like some people say, well, we don't have fans. I'm like, there's fan communities for scented candles. They're called Fandoms. It's a real thing. You can look it up. So
Wow.
if scented candles can have a fan base, like your business can too. It may not be huge, but it doesn't mean just because a fan base isn't huge doesn't mean it can't be loud.
Absolutely.
Right.
If it's engaging and it's passionate, that's what you need.
Exactly. So, other things that we do is just, we always want to try and make our audiences feel heard and recognized. On another thing we do on Invincible is we've got every episode we do a poster for each episode, kind of a old school movie style poster for every episode, every season. And during season 1, we started to notice every time we posted one of the first replies would be, the poster needs more Alan. Now, if you haven't watched the show, Alan the alien is a big pink one-eyed alien voiced by Seth Rogen. He's a fan favorite character. And we noticed that, this guy was chiming in every week. We, for about the first half of the season. And then we said, hey, why don't we make a special Alan poster? So immediately that next week we posted the show poster. Our fan replied, poster needs more Alan. And then we said, here you go. And it was the same poster. We just took some characters out and replaced them with Alan. And we just started doing that every week. So every episode of the show, just different Photoshop poster with Alan the alien. And not only did the fan who replied, appreciate it, other fans started to notice and expect it. And they would start, if we'd post the poster and, Connor, the fan, didn't reply, like, where's Connor? Is he okay? When are we going to see the Alan poster?
Wow.
So that became something that people really enjoyed and started engaging with. In that sort of fan interaction, it's just, it can be one-on-one, but then it also, people notice that you're replying and they appreciate that.
You guys almost created a sub fandom just for Connor. Right? That's the situation. That's awesome. I kind of want to go back because I think I've heard a couple of situations in the past. I don't know if this has ever happened to you. And if it doesn't, I'd love your opinion, but sometimes brands are a little hesitant, right? Maybe they've brought in a freelancer or a third-party agency to come in and work on their socials. And someone's been pitching to them like, hey, we need to be more on engaging with our community, that one-on-one touch. But there's a level of hesitation there for whatever reason. Have you ever first experienced that?
Yes. And, as a freelancer, I get to work with lots of different clients and on different projects, and everyone is different where, of what level of comfort they have with that. I've had some where every reply has to be approved, even liking a post. I have this, send, hey, is it okay to click like on this post? Had to be approved. Wow. And I understand, especially on high profile projects, the need for that, because you don't want to accidentally interact with somebody who, you look at their profile and it's like, oh, maybe that's not somebody we want to interact with. So I understand the caution, and that trust as a social media manager, especially as a freelancer kind of coming in, has to be earned.
Right.
Guardrails are really important, of what, where we can reply, what can we say, what can we not say? Having tone and voice documents of how do we speak to our fans is really important. I was briefly at the Texas Department of Transportation, and what I did, we pick out a voice for the brand, just a celebrity voice. We chose the stranger from The Big Lebowski, the Sam Elliott character with the big mustache. It's like, this is how we talk, and that made it really easy for me because I could look at like, would the stranger say this, or if I took a vacation, heaven forbid, a social media manager take a vacation, I could just take that picture and go, this is the voice of the brand. At one university, we used the Mythbusters build team, not the two guys, the three build team. Like, this is how we're going to talk. this is kind of the voice. And it's a shorthand way to do it. We have, of course, had longer tone and voice documents, but that celebrity shorthand was probably the easiest way to do it.
I've never heard of that before. That's very unique. I mean, obviously we talk about personas and, establishing a brand. That's such an easy way to understand the concept too, right? Like find a celebrity, a movie, a character, and align that with what this is what our brand sounds like. And it does give people a much clearer black and white almost of
it's rather than having to read a 20-page tone and voice document, you get it right away. Now you can read and get more detail, but if you need if you're calling in sick day one, just be like, okay, just be, Pee Wee Herman or whoever. That probably wouldn't be a good voice, but that's the first thing that came to my head. But that sort of
fair.
That's kind of a quick reference.
Yeah. And the guardrails, like you're saying, right? It's like showing the trust. When you're coming in, maybe you're just first time touching the brand, right? Like as a social media manager, you need to establish that trust with them. And so being able to maybe ask if they don't even have that, hey, do you have a document that outlines the yeses and the nos for this brand? Are there things that we just don't say, right? But in short, makes the experience better, builds that trust, and gives them to feel comfortable with your ability to manage the community. I wanted to ask you, maybe not necessarily shifting gears, but in the community management space, tell me if I can't go there too much, but with the Rings of Power series that's coming out, it's almost like, tell me a little bit about how it's been working on something like that, because it's pretty high profile as well.
On that one, I've got a lot of NDAs. I have to be but I would say it was just talk about high profile projects in general. On something like that, it's much more. There's a lot more eyes on every single post, the community management as well. And for something like that, I really understand that. It needs to have that level of community management where you're interacting with fans, but that level of caution needs to be even higher. I always, run a quick check before interacting with anyone. I mentioned earlier, you want to be sure you're not interacting with somebody you don't want to be interacting with.
Yeah.
Taking a look at you don't have to go read all of their tweets, but just take a quick glance at their profiles, see if there's, anything on there that makes you kind of question like, oh, okay, this might be a little touchy, or this person might bite back too. So that's a big consideration. And then also figuring out what is acceptable to say. Sometimes it can be just having a sheet of, sort of, talking points of preloaded responses. And we can always go in and edit those a little bit, make them sound a little bit more human and varied, so we're not just copying and pasting every time.
PR script. Yeah.
Right. But we have these vetted responses that have been approved by whoever in leadership does the approvals, and we can use those, and they're comfortable with that. Don't stray from the script, but
that's fair.
That's pretty fair. And as sometimes there are times where I see something I really want to reply to, I'm like, no, we can't do that. And that happens. But you also have to remember, as a social media manager, we get very attached to our accounts and our communities, and we have to remind ourselves from time to time, they're not ours.
Fair. That's true.
They do belong to the brand. So, and I think letting leadership know that you understand that builds that trust and actually helps you have more liberty too. So that's important.
Sense. And I think with the high profile, there's a whole element to this too, which is like embargoed content or like launch dates for software, for products, for iPhone releases. And, like there's obviously there's community engagement. There's so much, like you said, I'm invested in this product. Like it's almost like I feel like I was part of the design team around this iPhone launch or something like that. But listen, there's a date and we can't talk about X, Y, and Z until then. And it's very...
that's like the ultimate line you do not cross, that you have to be very aware. Like, and especially in the entertainment industry, that like release dates, information, spoilers, that's a big one. Like, because sometimes we get to see the shows ahead of time, or for programs I've worked on, it's an adaptation. I work community management on the Shogun series for FX and Hulu. And I read the book, so I knew what was going to happen next week, and anybody who's read it knows what's going to happen. So there's that question of like, do you interact with the fan who has read it and is like expecting this next thing? Invincible's the same way. So we try to, no, we're not going to, we might give a little wink and nod to that, but we're not going to
That makes
interact, just
sense.
because there are
Yeah.
fans who choose like, I'm going to watch the show and then read the book,
Yeah.
or vice
And it's fair to give
versa.
them a first experience and let that be
Mhm.
something that's organic for them,
Exactly.
right? Build that memory. Wow, this is a lot.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being here. I did have some additional things that I wanted to talk through with you. When we talk about community management and engagement in general, especially with talk about the entertainment industry, there's so much collaboration opportunity in there. Do
Mhm.
you feel like when you start building that audience, you're engaging with the community, do you feel like sometimes it creates this nice environment for celebrities or
Mhm.
high profile people to come in and start engaging? Is that something that becomes just more naturally relevant or happens more
It
often?
varies, of course, depending on who's in the show. Some actors and actresses, their very talent is very hands-on. They want to engage with the
Mm.
fans, and others are like not so much. So want to encourage it when possible, but creating that community, it and that friendly environment is really important. But also, I think it's important to remember it's not just your cast; it's your community that can help you.
Mhm.
In the entertainment industry, like I said, I love cosplayers. Cosplayers are the best. They are walking billboards for you, and they're doing it voluntarily. Whatever we can do to encourage them to do that, because we may not post, we might share an awesome cosplay, but they're taking pictures, that people are taking pictures with them, and that's going all over. So we want to encourage that. I've even seen some shows that will put out like costume detail information specifically for cosplayers. To like,
Wow.
here, if you want to cosplay this character, here is exactly close-up details. Or even from the community management side, a cosplayer might say, "Hey, can I get a closer shot of this? What the buttons on their jacket look like?" And like, "Yeah, I'll find that for you." We can do
Wow.
that. And again, this doesn't just apply to the entertainment industry. It's just a matter of listening to what your audience wants and giving them more of that. And you
Right.
have to be open to listening to them and seeing what they have to say, and like jumping in and going, "Oh, here you go. This is, let them evangelize for you."
So for the people who are listening in or maybe watching us on YouTube as well, and they're like you said in the beginning, I don't do high profile accounts, and
Mhm.
maybe my industry is mortgage or I help real estate agents or hotels. How could they apply some of this? Can you give us a couple of tips?
In those exact examples, like real estate, somebody buying a new house is their. I just bought we moved recently and bought a new house. It's a big deal. It's
Yeah.
huge. It's the biggest purchase you'll make in your life. And, just being able to chime in to people who are, your customer who just bought one, replying to them, making them feel good about that purchase, goes a long way into them recommending you. Or looking for people who are, you can find those Facebook groups of people. There's one I joined when we moved, it's people, newcomers to this town. And there's a lot of real estate agents in there going, "Hey, yeah, I can help you," but doing it in a helpful way that's not like,
Yeah. It's all about how you approach
right.
it too, right? 'Cause you can
And
definitely be salesy in that.
right. But also like a hotel, people are on vacation. They're taking photos. They're posting with your location on there. Like jump in there. Just give them a quick like goes a long way. Even if you don't have the time to come up with a witty comment or something in there, just a like, letting them know, "Hey, we saw your post and we appreciate you doing this," goes a long way. That just little touch means a whole lot. And I there's the cliche you hear a lot and just ad nauseum in social media marketing. It's like social is meant to be social, and I think it's become such a cliche we kind of forget what it actually means and what does it mean to be
Yeah.
social
Yeah.
online. And that's what it is. It's getting out there in your community and letting them know that you're right there with them. Like, "Yeah, I appreciate you posting this. I'm listening to you, and we are here for you when you need us."
Yeah. It almost gives me like the small town feel where you see some movies or they're walking down the streets like, "Hey, Joe, how's it going? Hey," and it's like people know each other. It's that sense of community. And I think we've lost a little bit of that
Yeah,
touch
I'll tell
through
you,
the
like,
digitalization.
since we're talking, superhero stuff. So my superhero origin story as a social media manager, years back when I first started my Twitter account, and I wasn't working in social media, I still was thinking about being a professor. I had a bad day on the way home, stopped by. This will be good. This was some free publicity for Taco Bueno. I picked up Taco Bueno on the way home and through the drive-thru and got home and my order was wrong. And I didn't use Twitter at all, and I just tweeted, Taco Bueno got my order wrong. More like Taco Malo. And I was young and annoying, but I didn't even tag them. And this is like 2007, 2008. And they replied like, oh, we're so sorry, DM us, we'll get you a coupon, make it right. And that was when it clicked for me, like, oh, this is something that can be more. And now that's pretty, industry standard. But at the time it was, mind blowing. And I do think in some ways we have gotten away, as social media grows, we've gotten away from that basic level of customer service, of paying attention to your community, even if they aren't happy, happy or they're not directly mentioning you.
Fair. Oh, like
doing that social listening and finding that in those interactions. So
yeah, absolutely. Social listening. It's tough, right? Because on one hand, we hear a lot about social media managers being spread really thin. I'm not responsible for 7 different networks. This is the cadence that my client wants me to work on, and this and that. Or how do I even find the time? It's important though. And I think that there's a way to communicate that value to the organization that you're working for, so that the bandwidth can either be made or priorities can be shifted, right?
Yeah. And well, yeah, I would say, like, talking about cadence of posting, what you post on your public profile goes on the timeline should only be about 10% of what you actually post. Everything else really should be replies. That's the
Wow.
tip of the iceberg. And the replies are really where the magic happens. And you don't know how, we're seeing it on TikTok already, where brands will reply on someone else's post and it will get so much engagement, more than one of their actual videos. So you've gotten more interactions from a reply than you have from the video you spent days making or whatever. Another example on Invincible is when we announced the launch that we had been greenlit for seasons 2 and 3. We made the announcement, Invincible is coming back for seasons 2 and 3. And one of the first replies was just source ? They didn't look at our, it was before Elon changed verification. They didn't see our check mark and go, you're official. They thought we were like a fan account or something. So I just replied, us? And that got a huge amount of engagement. But what was really special was about 6 months later, a fan screen capped that interaction and posted it on his timeline and said, this still makes me laugh. And that fan's post got more engagement than the season announcement post. Which did a lot of work for us. It helped publicize, and if people who might have missed that, and not everybody is chronically online as we are, and remembers that shows have been renewed. So it got that in front of a whole new audience for us, and did a whole lot just based upon not even 2 words of a reply, just us. Like is not even a word. Like it's barely 2 words. So I wouldn't discount those interactions. And if your management or your clients are telling you, we want a higher post cadence, the gold is in the replies.
Yeah,
gold is in the community, and that's something to remember.
I love that. All right, well, hey, Jon-Stephen, thank you again for being here with us. We appreciate you. I know we wanted to wrap up on some tips, and I think you've kind of done my job for me. We're probably going to be seeing him very shortly in an upcoming episode, so make sure that you subscribe, or wherever it is that you consume our podcast content, that you also set up those notifications. If you want to join us, like Jon-Stephen, in a future episode, you want to come and chat about social media management and marketing, make sure to head over to vistasocial.com/beyondsocial. And if you have any suggestions on topics you'd like to see covered, let us know as well. Thank you so much.
And thank you so much for having me.
See you next time.